You ever have one of those months where you just decide, this month I think I'm just going to go ahead and pick up all those things that people have been bullying me to read for a while? Yeah, that's going to be August of 2024. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another TBR, this time for the month of August of 2024. Just finalized these today, and some tough decisions were made, but I am continuing with that same approach I've been doing the past few months where I'm mixing it up. I'm still on that sabbatical from them long books. I did talk about that a couple days ago. But me doing the one horror, one sci-fi, one fantasy, one miscellaneous, and one manga or comic. That's kind of the plans here for the foreseeable future. I'll get back to probably the way I was, where I was reading, 9 straight epic fantasy books that are 900 pages long. But as of right now, I feel like this is the best way for myself. So a lot of these are going to be things that people have recommended to me a ton. Now, last month I did, stuff that my patrons recommended to me. This is just really books that, since I started the show, I've had a lot of people telling me, you need to read this right now. And that's kind of what I've focused on a bit this month because I thought it would be fun. Let's begin with that miscellaneous one. Now, a lot of people are going to say, Mike, that's just horror. But for me, it's kind of a horror, fantasy, thriller, mystery, supernatural kind of mix-up. So that's why I'm going with Black House by Stephen King as my miscellaneous for this month. Now, full disclosure, I've never read this. This will be a first-time reading for me because when I went through my great Stephen King read as a young man, I read everything he had published up to that point in the mid-90s, except for Dark Tower and Talisman, because those were the ones that my library did not have. So I didn't actually read the Talisman until I started doing this great Stephen King reread that I started right before I began this channel. So this is one I've never actually done before. I'm also one of those very few King fans who really thought that the Talisman was just aight. It was a lot of things about it I didn't care for, mostly because of Richard. I think Richard might be the worst character in all of Stephen King's multiverse, so it might just be some of that. But it might just also be some of the things that a lot of people told me they liked it. They said they read it when they were younger, they saw it kind of as a coming-of-age gateway for them into fantasy. And I understood that because I did like Jack. Jake's Dark Tower, Jack is Talisman, right? And that was another thing. I felt like it was just kind of great value Dark Tower. I wanted it to be in the Dark Tower. And a lot of people told me this does kind of make it tie into the Dark Tower a little bit. So if even it's a retcon, I'm okay with that. And I think all things at that point in King's career, he was finding ways to tie them on the Dark Tower as he was coming up on the conclusion to that series. So fans have been really knocking on my door on this one. So you didn't really like... People that love Talisman don't really like this one as much, and people that like this one don't like a Talisman as much. So maybe I'll be one of those who really, really enjoys Black House. But what is Black House about, you may ask? Well, abandoned by his friends as they cycle through the Wisconsin town of French Landing, 10-year-old Ty Marshall spots a crow hopping toward him down the sidewalk. Then it calls his name. Fascinated, Ty gets off his bike for a closer look and is dragged into the shadows. Is Ty destined to become the 4th victim of the fisherman, the serial killer who's stalking this sleepy town? If so, only ex-detective Jack Sawyer may be able to save him. Jack left his old life behind precisely to avoid such madness, but lately he's been visited by strange nightmares and visions. Could the doomed past he thought he'd escape forever be reaching out for him from the Black House? So, okay, yeah, cool. I got my answer. There it is, Jack. I knew it was similar. I couldn't remember they were both Jakes, but yeah, okay, so we got Jack dealing with him as a much older man, and yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes from here because I've heard really great things from people, like I said, that were kind of lukewarm on the Talisman like I was, and they've all told me that they want me to read it because they think that I would like it quite a bit. So it's King, and I'll be honest, guys, a lot of the problems with Talisman, I blame Peter Straub, and I'll admit that was unfair. It's really hard for me to look at things and say, hey, everything I liked was by Stephen King, and everything I didn't like was by Peter Straub, and I know I was unfair with that. And, a couple years of distance between those will make me realize that was really just a dumb thing for me to do. But, I'm going to go into this again with an open mind and see how it works. Now, next up for the fantasy one, this is one that has been just beyond a long time coming. And I got to preface at the beginning by saying, Malazan fans, I know you've been waiting for me to continue with that series. What I've said with Malazan was that I was going to go back to it when I felt like it was time. And I don't feel like it's time yet. I've gotten to the same spot and told the hounds twice and stopped. Now, I'm never going to quit because I don't think you go through 7.5 of those monstrous books and quit. But I have been putting off other series that I wanted to read because I said, it's a little dense, it's a little heavy. I want to finish Malazan first because if I don't, I'll never finish it. Well, I think I'm going to go back on that because I'm tired of putting off other things while I wait for the right moment to arrive with Malazan. And that leads me, guys, to the fantasy pick for this month, which is The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. I cannot tell you how many times I've been told to read this series since I began this channel. Now, this is book 1 in his Prince of Nothing series, or his overall Second Apocalypse series, because there are 2 sub-series within that. But Prince of Nothing is a trilogy, and book 1 being obviously The Darkness That Comes Before. I have been bullied, like I said, by Joanna, by Philip, by Jordan over at iWizard, and many, many others. And I won't lie, guys, I had a little bit of FOMO on this, because a lot of the people that dropped out of my Malazan read-along years ago, they all started reading this instead, and all of them were just talking about like how great it was, how this is what they wanted Malazan to be. Now, I don't know if that's an apt comparison or not. The comparison I always get is it's like A Song of Ice and Fire and Dune. Well, Dune is my favorite book of all time, and A Song of Ice and Fire is my favorite fantasy series of all time. So, yeah, that sounds amazing, and I'm pretty sure that's why Philip told me he thinks that when I might be paraphrasing, because I think this is what he said. I believe he said when I do my updated top 10 fantasy lists in a couple of years, he's pretty sure this one will be on it. So a lot of people told me this is going to be everything that I do love. It is very, very grimdark. It's brutal, and it's very unforgiving, but it does have a lot of those influences like a Dune in there, and I think that sounds really, really awesome. So everything about this sounds cool, but if you don't know what it is about, I'm going to try to let you know here. Well, a holy war launched by the *ฑ kingdoms against the heathen phantom of the south to recover the holy city of ℕ𝕤 for the faithful. During a war, a man named ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤 emerges from the obscurity to become an exceptionally powerful and influential figure. And it is discovered that the Consults, an alliance of forces united in the worship of the legendary ℚ-God, a nihilistic force of destruction, are manipulating events to pave the way for the ℚ-God's return to the mortal world. And I know I said all those words wrong, but it's one of those things, maybe over time I'll learn how these characters' names. I don't even know how hard it was for me just to say ℚ𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤𝕤. Is that the name? Yeah, so this should be fun. Kind of makes me think of when I was doing Memory Star on a Thorn with Tad Williams, and every time there was a word with a lot of apostrophes in it, and I'm still convinced that the apostrophe button on Tad Williams' keyboard was stuck or something. I just kind of like glazed over it a little bit, but over time you kind of grew into it and you just got used to it. And think about it. I'm pretty sure it'll be this way there. Obviously, you're going to have some fantasy names. They're not going to be able to showing up named Steve or something. It's going to be a little unique there, and I can see that already because several of these words did give me the Malazan vibe of, oh my gosh, those are some interesting words there. But yeah, again, a long time coming for this series, and I'm excited to finally get into it. And now I'm getting that point where now I worry that if I let people down, if I don't like it, that's kind of the worry when you finally dig in to some of these series that people want you to read. But I'm excited for it. I'm going to it with a really, really positive mindset, and I hope it is everything that people have told me that they think it will be for me. And that leads me to my horror one for this month. And I've got to say, guys, I am so happy to be reading more horror, because something I've really wanted to do was read more horror that wasn't just Stephen King, and not saving these all for just the month of October has been really great. And doing one per month has been a lot of fun, because I think standalone horror is just awesome. It's something that can just be an amazing palate cleanser if you want to use it. And finding some of these, maybe some lesser known, some independent, some self-published kind of authors out there, that's really helped a lot. And with this one, I don't think that there's anyone. Every single time I announce my horror book for the month, I always get a bunch of comments of people that are upset that it's not Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Now, with this one, I don't really know too much about it. When I read the synopsis here for you for the first time, that's really going to be what I find out what's about. I've just been told by everybody, like, for example, I talked about Come With Me by Ronald Malfi and say that I was upset that it was listed as horror when it wasn't a horror book at all. And everyone's like, you thought that wasn't really scary enough for you? Well, man, Boys in the Valley is going to be exactly what you want. And the way they put it to me was, it's not like scary as I always talk about. You can't really be scared as a reader after you get a certain age, but you can get a little psyched out, a little uncomfortable, and that sounds like what this is. And everybody's telling me that's going to be the kind of thing where you'll be thinking about it while you're laying awake at night, unable to go to sleep because you can't get it out of your head. Well, hey, that sounds excellent. So the expectations for this one are high, and this is actually a ARC. This was an uncorrected advanced reading copy that I got a while back, and I just never got to it, obviously. So, hey, better late than never. So I tell people to send me ARCs, because you never know, guys. I never say never, and you never know when this can happen. But this one, word of mouth, has led me here. But what is Boys in the Valley about? Well, at the turn of the century, in a remote valley in Pennsylvania, lies St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. Here, under the watchful eyes of several priests, 30 boys work, learn, and worship. Pete Barlow, orphaned as a child by a gruesome murder, has made a new life here. As he approaches adulthood, he has friends, a future, and a family. Then late one stormy night, a group of men arrive at the door, one of whom is badly wounded, and occult symbols carved into his flesh. His death releases an ancient evil that spreads like sickness, infecting St. Vincent's and the kids within. Soon the boys begin acting differently, forming groups, taking sides, and others turn up dead. Now Peter and those dear to him must choose sides of their own, each of them knowing their lives, perhaps their eternal souls, are at risk. So I didn't even know how supernatural this was going into it, but that sounds really awesome. I love the idea. I've said several times, something that I love is being in an enclosed area, being hunted by something. I call it the alien, obviously, the Ridley Scott alien format, is being in an enclosed area where you can't get out and you're being hunted by something. I don't know if that's necessarily it, or if this is something that's going to kind of be hopping into one of those things like The Thing, where you don't know who is the bad guy. These are all things that I love in my horror, and this sounds very, very cool. So thank you for all the people who have been recommending this to me. And the thing is, like, people who don't even like horror have really recommended this one to me. And that's both a plus and a red flag. I think plus because if you can kind of exceed that audience that you would usually have, I feel like that's cool. But also, well, if you don't really like horror, how do you know if it's something that horror fans will like? I don't know. We'll see. I haven't heard anything bad about the book yet. That's what's really, really exciting about it. As for my sci-fi one, it fell on the floor here. I was able to get an advanced reader copy of this, but obviously I have my schedule full, so I won't be able to actually start a little bit early because I never count on being able to get ARCs because publishers are just so flaky with these things. But I was able to get an ARC of The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. The Mercy of Gods. John Gwynn's been confusing me with his Mercy of Gods and Fury of the Gods and all that stuff. I love The Expanse, and I finished The Expanse last year, and I said no matter what they wrote next, I was going to pick up, and this sounds awesome. Apparently this was like heavily influenced by their love for many sci-fi things, including Dune, which again is my favorite thing in the world, and this sounds very interesting. The thing was, I was already excited about it, but then Alan over at Library Alexandria, I read his Goodreads review of it, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds excellent. He said really great things to say about it. But it's really, really interesting that this is going to be a trilogy. After Expanse was like 9 books. Now so this is going to be a trilogy, and these guys write really fast. This is Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank together. Their superpowers combined, they create James S.A. Corey. But, they did work under George R.R. Martin, so it makes it really just crazy how fast they put out material, right? I have to, everyone. I love you, George, but I have to get the low-hanging fruit when it's there. But apparently this is going to be a trilogy, and I expect this to be done, one a year, basically, for the next 3 years, how I expect it to go. So I don't mind starting an unfinished series, obviously, because these guys just write like the wind. But what is The Mercy of Gods about? Well, how humanity came to a planet called Anjin is lost in the fog of history. But that history is about to end. The ℏ, part Empire, part Hive, have waged wars of conquest for centuries, destroying or enslaving species across the galaxy. Now they are facing a great and deathless enemy. The key to their survival may rest with humanity. When the ℏ ships descend, they decimate the human population and take the best and brightest of society away to serve on the ℏ's homeworld. They are dropped in the middle of a struggle they barely understand, set in a competition against the other captive species, with extinction as the price of failure. Only a handful of prisoners see past the Darwinian contest to the deeper game that they must play to survive, learning to understand and manipulate the ℏs themselves. With a noble but suicidal human rebellion on one hand, and strange and murderous enemies on the other, the team pays a terrible price to become the trusted servants of their new rulers. ℚ Alcor is a simple man swept up in events that are beyond his control and more vast in his imagination. He will become the champion of humanity and its betrayer, the most hated man in history, and the guardian of his people. This is where the story begins. I love a good behind enemy lines kind of story. And this sounds like it's got some of that. It sounds like it's got some of the, you get, how well do I know my enemy? I kind of get to know my enemy through this. And then do you form a relationship with them? And it sounds like these characters are going to try to form that relationship, that bond. And that way they can work out their way to, escape or, undo everything. Who knows? This sounds interesting, but it sounds like it's being told in like a chronicling of history. At least we say this is where his story began. I don't know. Maybe I've just read too much Sun Eater, but that's kind of how it feels like, as we're going to be kind of someone recounting this story. That seems to be a very popular framing narrative for a lot of books these days. But hey, I'm never against that, and I'm not against learning about new sci-fi worlds. And at this point, Abraham, Frank, they've earned my trust on science fiction because I did love The Expanse. And would I take more of that? Sure. Would I take more of that with a little bit of Dune flavor into it, sure, yeah. And the reason I bring it up is because when they were talking about this series first, they were saying it was inspired by their love for Dune, and I'm like, that's okay. You got my attention for sure. Outside of that, guys, I do have a manga on here. It's just going to be One Piece, guys. But look, I'm not going to lie to you. I really shit the bed on this one. I hit a kind of a wall on Skypiea, and I think that one of those things where the expectations were so high for it that I just went into it expecting the world, and when it wasn't happening, I was just kind of disappointed a little bit. And my oldest, who loves the Skypiea art, keeps telling me, "Well, have you gotten to this part yet?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Just keep going, it's worth it." And I'm sure it will be. I mean, I don't feel like Oda has let me down on anything yet. I've really enjoyed every arc of One Piece so far, even the ones everybody calls terrible. I was just confused why everyone seems to love this one. It seems to be the one that I keep stalling out on. So it was probably a little ambitious of me to say I was going to do one of these sagas per month. That was probably a bit much, because with me, when it comes to comics or manga, I'm really streaky. I won't read any, and then I'll read like 8 volumes in a row, and then I won't read nothing for months. That's why I'm still working on Vinland Saga, for God's sake. So it's just one of those things where it's like watching animated series. I can't watch a lot of them just back to back to back. It's just one of those mediums where it's just hard for me. And I'll get to it, and I will, but I don't think I'll be getting to Water 7 here in July. I don't think I'll be finishing Skypiea. So for now, it's just going to be Skypiea until I get to the next one. And I know that's disappointing to some One Piece fans who really wanted to see me kind of roll through this. And I'm still going to. I'm not stopping. I'm not slowing down. It's still here. And, where's the fire? As far as I know, the series isn't ending anytime soon. So I've still got plenty of time to catch up. And catch up I will eventually. So for right now, I'm not going to be starting anything else in the manga or comics trade, but I will be continue to work on Skypiea until the foreseeable future does come to pass. I do have a different thing in October that's not going to be Skypiea, but we'll get to that another time. But guys, that is all of my plans for August. I'd love to know what you guys have planned. Are you going to read any of these? I'd love to have you join me if you want to jump on this Prince of Nothing bandwagon, because I have had a couple people tell me that they would reread it when I start reading it. And it's great to have a support group when you're going through something like that, because if you feel like it's overwhelming a little bit at first, you feel like you've got those people there who will help you out without spoiling anything for you. That's really great. That's why I thought that Malazan was a success at first, because there was so many people there that were struggling with the same things, and it didn't make them want to quit or anything like that. Not that I want to quit in Prince of Nothing. I'm just saying it's nice to have that support system. So if you guys want to join and I get enough people interested, jump on the Discord and I'll create a thread for this reading. And if I love the book, hey, I'll continue with the Prince of Nothing series. Right now, I don't feel like there's any chance I'm not going to like it just off the things that I've heard. I'm just hoping I like it as much as everyone else. That's my hope right now. But guys, if you're going to read any of these, please let me know. I'd love to have you join me. Again, jump on the Discord. But I'd love to know what you guys have planned for the month of August. Jump in the comments, guys, and let me know, and I will talk to you there.